Hello. I hope you're all well. It's my pleasure to have been invited to this great event in Africa. So thank you so much. My name is Sonia Teruel, and the presentation that I'm going to give today is called Regenerative Tourism, the New Era of Transformation. So to tell you a little bit about myself and why am I speaking about this, I'll tell you that I did my degree in London, England, where I lived for 6 years. And I've worked in the travel industry for many years from different fronts and in different destinations in the world. So I've been able to see with my own eyes the impacts that the tourism industry can have on destinations, and many of them, unfortunately, very negative. So I wanted to live in Mexico, where I've lived for the past 8 years up until a few months ago. And over there, I was the general manager and then the business development manager of an ethical inbound tour operator called Totonal Viajes. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Over there, because our focus was rural and indigenous communities, I felt it was my responsibility to get further training and further education. So I went on to do a master's degree at a university in Costa Rica, and there is where I specialized in regenerative tourism. So ever since, it has been nonstop of implementation, education, research. I'm part of different groups that continuously have these important conversations about this new paradigm and how it can be implemented at destinations, and especially, destinations that have tourism, that offer tourism. I'm also a lecturer, an education and a consultant, and the co-founder of the Regen Lab for Travel. So why was the Regen Lab created? So when I was in Mexico, as I mentioned, from this tour operator, our mission was always to give visibility to these rural and indigenous communities, because Mexico is a very popular country, but tourism is having a very negative impact, despite the millions and millions of visitors that arrive every year. And also, the rural communities have not much visibility, and they're living in very poor conditions. So our work was to work with them and recover and restore this culture, this amazing ancestral culture, and also preserve, obviously, the ecosystem. So we worked really hard for that. We wanted also to prove that you can be sustainable and profitable. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. So we prepared really well. So we said, okay, we want to show the world that we're serious about this. So we went on to certify. We got a few sustainable tourism certifications, which really helped us to give the company, the organization structure. But also there were a few things that started getting us frustrated. So we thought this is not having the impact that we thought it would have. So certain rural communities still had several problems, conflicts. Perhaps we were noticing some sort of lack of identity and empowerment. So looking for more knowledge and ways to maximize this impact, I went on to this master's degree that I mentioned at the beginning. And that's where I came across regeneration, so the new paradigm of regenerative development. So that's when, I thought this really, really clicked, and realized how important it is to work with place, to work with living systems, to work with identity, and get the local community involved in all of these projects, obviously. And so we started this transition in the organization in 2018, and I wrote a thesis about the subject that was quite an important starting point, let's just say, for the industry and what would come next. So realizing about the lack of information that there was at the time, and that I really struggled with, finding information about this, I thought, I need to write about this. And the world needs to know and needs to be aware of this. It's really important that we start transforming. So that's when this path started, and when we created the Region Lab for Travel, which is a platform that helps professionals and organizations, entrepreneurs to do this transition towards regeneration in the tourism industry. And we do that through courses, retreats, workshops, and consultation as well. So what are we going to see today? What we're going to cover briefly is why regeneration, what is really regenerative tourism, the top 4 regenerative principles to create a resilient business. There are many more than 4. I'm just going to mention 4 briefly. And what do we need to be ready for in this era? Okay, so why regeneration? We know that we are immersed in a global crisis. I think everyone is aware of this, and it's not news to anyone to say this. And not just since the pandemic, but before that. The fact that a virus has come to disturb our lives so much is a clear sign that our system, our world wasn't healthy enough and resilient enough. So we have this systemic crisis that includes a climate crisis, an ecological crisis, an energetic crisis, migratory crisis, but also a crisis of values, the relationships between humans and between humans and nature are completely deteriorated in many countries, in many areas, and especially in cities and in industrialized countries. And we still have a lot of inequality in the world, among many other important issues. Some disturbing details, just so that we are aware of this, is that the number of climate-related disasters has tripled in the last 30 years. Also between 2006 and 2016, global sea level rise was 2.5 times faster than during almost the entire 20th century. And that more than 20 million people a year are forced to flee their homes as a result of the effects of climate change. So this is a good evidence of what's going on, So if we think about, the Sustainable Development Goals, these goals are very noble, and they are very good efforts. But the truth is that the focus on the 3 pillars, which are environmental, social, and economic, to generate impact on a global scale, has really not been entirely effective. And most developed countries are already exceeded their biocapacity more than half a century ago, having to consume resources imported from abroad. Dr. Edward Muller, one of the pioneers of regenerative tourism, says that we are in the best documented planetary extinction in history, where there is plenty of scientific knowledge to give evidence of this. So it's not just wisdom, it's a scientific knowledge as well. And we have exceeded planetary limits. So what's consumed in a year, it takes the Earth 18 months to regenerate. That's from a Global Footprint Network report. So the ability of ecosystems to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. This shows really well what's going on, is the country overshoot days. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it. If not, I truly invite you to have a look at their website. A country overshoot day is the date on which the Earth's overshoot day will fall if all humanity consumes like the inhabitants of this country. And the Earth's Overshoot Day marks the date on which humanity has exhausted nature's budget for the year. For the rest of the year, we maintain our ecological deficit by depleting local resource reserves and accumulating carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So the conclusion of this is that we are operating in debt in the world. So as you can see, we can really no longer sustain, because there's nothing to sustain. We have to regenerate. So we have to go beyond this, okay? So to show the development from the conventional practice to regeneration, I'm going to show you this diagram created by Bill Reed in 2006, which I think is very good. So if we start from the bottom, I hope that you can see well. We have the conventional practice, which is a system that tries to limit damage, but is still degenerative, being one step ahead of breaking the law, basically. So we can see here that, on the left, we have more degenerative systems and fragmented, and where more energy is required. And then we start slowly developing towards a system where less energy is required, and it's a bit more whole and regenerative. So we start from there. Then we go through this green stage where we realize that tourism can have really negative impacts, and it already indicates improvement in direction, integrating human activities into natural systems, but it's still from a fragmented view of the world. Then we arrive at sustainability, which is neutral or 100% less bad. And this is also sustaining the health of the Earth's organism and systems. But sustainability is still a top-down movement with a series of practices to be developed where we impact and then try to compensate that impact. So that's mostly, what sustainability is about. So we make impacts and we compensate those impacts, okay? And from this point, we move on to restoration, where we use activities to restore the capacity of natural systems to a healthy state, such as reforestation, for example, right? So we talk about restoring the capacity of a system to self-organize and evolve. And this would be like planting trees, carbon footprint, offsetting. So it's great, but still not seen with a sense of living system. And finally, we got to this stage, the regenerative state. We come to regeneration, which is a process that involves the Earth and the biotic systems in which we are part, as well as the people of each unique place, engaging all actors and processes and building people's capacity for long-term healthy relationships. So what we're doing here is realizing that man and nature are really need to co-evolve. So the human is not just someone completely separate from nature that can have a relationship with nature. So we are here realizing that we are part of nature and we need to co-evolve and have a reciprocal relationship. So there's a constant dialogue of restoration and evolution where there is always learning, feedback, and co-evolution.